Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard. I went from being a lawyer and partner at one of the largest firms in America to becoming an online personality and successful entrepreneur. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your health and personal life. So, how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you chase joy while achieving success? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back to Hustle and Flow. I am your host, Heather Hubbard, and we are on episode 192. We are in the middle of our Small Business Month series, and we have a very special guest with us today, Jacquette Timmons. For 3 decades, she has been advancing the culture of financial well-being. She's been helping people decrease their financial stress and increase their financial health and wealth by getting them to focus on both sides of the money equation, the numbers, along with the psychology and emotions of money. She does this by helping people focus on their relationship with money because this relationship influences every swipe, every deposit, every fiscal choice you make, every price you charge and pay. Now, if y'all have been listening to Hustle and Flow for a while, you may be like, I feel like I have heard of the name Jacquette Timmons. You probably didn't see her because we weren't doing video back then. It was just the audio. But she's a repeat guest, okay? And I went back and looked, and it was episode 148. And we recorded this, guess what, Jacquette? It was January 21st of 2020.
Oh my God. Wow.
I mean, we didn't even know
We
what
didn't
was about
know.
to happen.
Oh my
Um,
God.
but it was growing with your money. So definitely go back and check out that episode if you haven't heard it. It was also great. But clearly, I've known Jacquette for a while. And really quick backstory, and then we're going to start asking her a bunch of questions. We were on a connection call and not very long ago. And I do not have a poker face. So when I start thinking something, you're going to see it come up on my face. And she was talking about a pricing masterclass that she was going to have. And I just had this look, and Jacquette was like, Heather, what's going on? And I was like, I have a small business series for the podcast that already has week 3 as pricing. And I've mapped it out, but I'm not the expert. You're the expert. I'm like, will you please come on and do this? And she was very gracious and generous and said yes. So, welcome back to the show, Jacquette.
Oh my goodness. Your invitation was very generous and gracious. So thank you. I'm so delighted to be here.
It is win-win for everyone.
Yes, absolutely.
I have so many questions, but I know we've got 30 minutes. And so I'm going to keep us to it.
Okay.
Um, but I'm not even going to do a ton of the background because, frankly, I just think if y'all want that, just go listen to the other episode. We talked a little
Mhm.
bit about that. Today, we are talking about how do you price your offers? How do you price your services? And I would love to actually start with a conversation that came up on our connection call. You
Yeah.
may or may not remember this. Okay.
Mhm.
So I actually did an episode back this fall that had to do with loss leader pricing. And I said, I probably for the first time, I have changed my mind about saying charge what you're worth. I actually don't know if I ever said that, but I could see myself saying that. And I was like, I no longer like it.
Mhm.
But some of the reasons you gave were a little bit different than mine, but were super eye-opening for me. So I would love for you to share with everyone how you feel about the phrase charge your worth and what it is that bothers you about that.
Oh my goodness. So thank you for this platform to do that because I use every chance I possibly can to really invite us to remove that phrase from our vernacular. And, as people will see that are watching us on YouTube or Instagram, wherever they may see this, I'm Black. My heritage is Jamaican American. I have an ancestral history where a dollar amount has been attached to someone's humanity. So even if someone does not mean that, that's not their intention when they say charge what you're worth, that is how I viscerally experience it. So I don't like it on a personal level because of that. But I also don't like it because I think it entirely misses the boat on a professional level. You're doing a whole series, right? And part of that series is looking at your offer. To me, part of what fits into the question of how do you charge for this or what do I charge for this is understanding what's the job of that offer. What's the internal job of that offer? What's the external job of that offer? In addition to that, it is looking at what you bring to the table, which is why I think some people get caught up in the whole charge what you're worth because you can't extract yourself from the equation. But again, it's not about you exclusively. But when we think about what do you bring to the table, what's your education, both formal and informal, your expertise, your gifts, your talents, your perspective, the network that you have, all the things that if you are standing in the middle and there are two people on the other side of you or one person on each side of you, and you're all doing the same thing, what's that combination of factors though that makes what you do different from other people? And then I think finally, or not just finally, but two more points to make is it depends on the container, right? A 2-hour experience is very different than 6 months, 6 weeks, 12 months. And also, what are the needs of your business? And of that, what do you need from your business? That whole phrase, charge what you're worth, that has none of that built into it. And so those are the personal reasons and as well the professional perspective that I bring to why that phrase drives me crazy every single time I hear it.
Thank you so much for sharing. Um, yeah, so for me, and for those who don't want to go back and listen, um, I'd gotten to the point where I realized when we're talking about worth, our self-worth is way more than we could ever charge, right? Like, and so for me, I was just like, your worthiness has nothing to do with the prices that you are charging. Like, you could never charge enough, right? Um, and so yes, I think all of these conversations are so important. And when you know, if I've probably said that in the past, I wasn't, I just wasn't stopping to think about all of the different layers. And so let's all agree that we're no longer going to say that. And if we do, we're going to try to catch it and then say,
Exactly.
that's not what I meant.
Rewind, scratch.
I'd like to start over. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. All right. So we're removing that from
Yes.
our vocabulary. And because I know we could just jump straight in, but I do have a few just quick
Yeah,
questions
please.
that
Yeah.
I genuinely don't know how you feel about this, and I'm just kind of interested.
Okay, cool.
So, how do you feel about hourly pricing versus packaged fixed fee pricing?
So let's see here. I work a lot with lawyers and law firms, and so I know that they are that industry for the most part is very entrenched in hourly pricing. So how do I feel about it? I think for businesses that are not that, it's important to know internally if you feel good about when you break down that price, what you are earning on a per hour basis. But I think you do yourself a better service when you actually position it as a package. Because here's the thing, when you say it's per hour, people are only thinking about the time that you were showing up, but they're not thinking about all of the things that you have to be able to do in order to provide them what it is that they came to you for within that hour. And that's
Mhm.
very different. And so I would prefer if people, including lawyers, if they could, um, priced in the context of a package, and that's what I would recommend for most people. But I do think it's beneficial to know what does that break down on an hourly basis so that you can really determine if how you are doing things is profitable for you on a per offer basis and as a portfolio. Because, as you probably remember, I used to manage money. So I have this tendency to think in portfolios. So I think of all the offers that we have as an asset, right? As a piece of the portfolio. And you want to know whether or not one offer is you want to know what that one offer is contributing to the overall portfolio. And some offers are more profitable than others. And breaking it down on an hourly basis is one way of being able to see, oh, this offer is contributing more to my bottom line and my profitability and not this. And I thought it was the reverse. So I think it can help you suss those kinds of things out. But I think that that is an internal exercise, not an external communication.
Mhm. The portfolio concept is really interesting to me. I love this. That like I'm a visual person
Mhm.
and I really like that. That's going to help me. I I hate the hourly fee.
Mhm.
I think and I'm sure everyone has kind of heard me on my soapbox before on this. I just feel like it sets up a relationship where you and your client, like there's constantly this distrust of why did it take you that long? You know what I mean? Like, here's how long it should have taken. And they're not focused on the value, they're focused on your time. And
Right. And it
exactly
makes it
what you said.
transactional.
Yeah. And it's exactly as you said, it's you technically are building in your overhead and other things into that. But when you're charging by the hour, it feels like yeah, that it's just your time. And this is part of what we talked about last week with our packaging and positioning. Part of it is a marketing tool. And I personally think it is more persuasive to market and sell a package as opposed to your time.
Mhm.
But I was just curious
Yeah. No,
from
I,
your
I
perspective.
definitely am on the same page as you. And to reiterate, I think one of the challenges with an hourly approach is that it makes it transactional as opposed to relational.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. All right. I know y'all think it's impossible. I'm challenging you to think outside the box. Okay. My other quick question, and then we're going to kind of actually dig into how do you do some pricing. How do you feel about discounts and promotions?
I have a very strong dislike for discounts, very strong dislike for discounts. Promotions, we can talk a little bit more about because I want to understand what that means. But I think in terms of discounts, if you are going to retire, perhaps an offer and you need some quick cash and discounts is one of the ways to do that, okay, I'll let that slide. But if it's the case where you are cash crunched or for whatever reason you're like, oh, let me offer a discount for something that I paid full price for a week ago and somebody else paid full price for a month ago, I just think that that's not cool. And I also think it sends the wrong message. And one of the suggestions that I made to a lot of people, at the beginning and as people were navigating themselves through the thick of the pandemic is if you need cash, come up with an alternative offer. Don't cannibalize the offer that you have already had out there at a particular price and you've gotten some traction for. Because I just don't, I just think the goodwill there gets eroded away and you're not a retail store that can where the expectation is there will be a discount. So I have a very strong reaction to discount. Now, when you say promotion, tell me a little bit more.
So for me, like when you're doing a promotion, it might be let's say you're doing a launch, right? Or even if it's a holiday, because it may not be a sell, but you might have a promotion where it's like you're bundling things or you're offering bonuses or additional services for a set amount of time.
Well, in that instance, I think it's more of sweetening the pot. And so it's an incentive to get people to take action more quickly than they would otherwise. So in that instance, I don't think it's a bad thing. But for some people that do, and look, I am saying this, not having discounted, but I definitely did like a Cyber Monday special. And I was
Mhm.
just like, nah, I'm not doing that ever again.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be strategic around A, why are you doing it? B, what is the financial benefit to you for doing it? And then what is the reputational or positional benefit of doing it? So if you can answer those questions and you feel good about your answers to those questions, go for it. But if any of those questions you pause, that might mean that doing a promotion is you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. And so then
Yeah.
that means that it's not good for you in the long term, even if it makes you feel good in the short term.
Yeah. I feel like we don't ever have these conversations. There
Yeah.
are so many business coaches and just programs out there like this is the model, this is the formula without ever stopping to say, but let's think through this.
Right.
Um, we used to have so many discussions on my team around some of this stuff where we would do discounts, but only like with timing. So it might be an early bird discount.
Mhm.
Which I still think is fine if you're trying to get enough of an interest in a certain thing, right? There's a reason for it. But I will also say that we trained our audience and we trained our clients that there would be an early bird. And people, if they missed that window, sometimes wouldn't sign up at all and would say, I'm going to wait till next year because I don't want to pay more.
Right.
Right. So, um,
Yeah, and
yeah,
you bring up a really good point. If it's something that you are going to offer, on an ongoing basis, then you really, really need to be strategic about that. And I think probably where it may work best in terms of like a discount is if you are experimenting with a new offer and you're doing like, here's the alpha test, and then we're going to do the beta test, like before you go to the thing, then
yeah,
that might be an instance because those initial people are perhaps helping you to refine it. So again, that, what's that exchange there? And those people getting in at a lower price might be helpful to whatever additional improvements you might want to make to the experience. And
yeah.
then, so yeah. I feel like I'm rambling.
No, I mean, it's just such a great conversation. All right. So let's talk about you're pricing something.
Mhm,
Um, maybe let's say it's a new offer. And so you're
mhm.
like, how do I even begin to price this? What are the biggest mistakes people make when they start that process?
There are a few, and for the sake of time, we can talk about two.
Okay.
One is everybody asks that question, what should I charge for this, right? They ask it when they are creating something new. They ask it when they are reviewing their pricing and they're like, okay, is now the time to increase it? And because we're all asking it, there is the idea that because the question is universal, then is the answer. And actually, the answer is unique. And we don't take into account that variance between the ubiquitousness of the question and then the uniqueness of the answer. And one of the examples that I often give is, I live in Brooklyn. I love coffee. I make it at home most times, but I like to go to my little area, neighborhood coffee shops. I walk outside my home. There's a coffee shop on the same side of the block as me. It's on the ground floor of a brownstone. Across the street is another coffee shop. Across the avenue is another coffee shop. Walk to the corner, there's another coffee shop. So in less than 5 minutes, I've got an option of 4 different places to go. They each charge a different price for a black coffee. They each charge a different price for one of my favorites, an iced dirty chai iced latte. And the thing that I think is the mistake is that, yes, you need to be aware of what people are pricing, but you don't need to copy it. And I think those are great examples of people not copying because they don't know what the back office stuff is for each. Like I have a suspicion that on the coffee shop that's on my side of the block, because this side is all brownstones, that that was a house that was inherited as a part of the estate plan because I knew the person who owned it and passed away. And I bet you those grandkids do not have a mortgage on that. So they can charge in a very different way than the place across the street. That piece of property, yes, it's still in the bottom of a brownstone, but it has always been commercial. So that's a
Mm.
whole different dynamic. And but you don't know, you're not privy to those details. So I think sometimes we look at what our peers, or even if they're outside of our industry, what other people are charging, and we're like, oh, we should copy that, when we don't know all of the factors that they are taking into consideration to come up with that number. So that would be
Mhm.
one mistake. A second mistake, and I kind of alluded to this last week when I did an Instagram video, um, is projecting your buying behavior onto other people. So in my little video, I talked about going to one of my favorite places to buy a dirty chai iced latte, but I'll use this as an example instead. I have a really good friend who loves jeans, and she will spend anywhere from $200 to $500 on a pair of jeans. I happen to think that that's kind of crazy. And I happened to mention that, and it was a few of us, and one friend who's known us, for over 30 years, looked at me and said, "You have a lot of nerve." And I'm like, "Why?" She goes, "Because you would spend that much on a blouse, on a pair of shoes, on a wallet. Like there's so many things that you would spend that money on without blinking an eye." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right. But because I'm not into jeans, I would never do that for jeans." And I think we do that often when it comes to pricing. We'll say things like, well, I wouldn't pay that much. And so the assumption is that the people that you're selling to wouldn't pay that much. And we have to be careful of when we are not projecting our buying behavior onto those that we want to buy from us.
I'm thinking of a few examples in like masterminds where one person is sharing what they're doing and what they're going to charge, and other people in the room start saying, "Well, I wouldn't pay for that," or "I wouldn't pay that much for that," or "I hired this out and that is not what I pay them." And it's like, are you the ideal client?
Right.
You might not be. And
Right.
so knowing whose opinion to listen to and
Mhm.
whose to
Mhm.
just let go has a lot to do with, is this my ideal client, the
Yeah.
perfect client? Not a
Exactly.
would I take them as a client, but like
Right.
my perfect client.
Yeah. Totally. And then if there's time for one more, I think another mistake is people thinking that just because they're cash flow positive and profitable, that they're doing well.
Mm.
Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you're doing well in that snapshot moment, but are you really doing well? Like, are you paying, like, how are you measuring well? Are you paying yourself as much as you could given how well that you're doing? And if you're not, is that intentional? If you, provided your business with any sort of financing at the very beginning, whether it was from savings, whether it was withdrawing from your 401k, whatever, have you begun to replenish that? If you haven't, then really, are you?
I love this. So in our the first episode this month in our series, we talked about gross revenue versus net profit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important
Mm-hmm.
to know the difference
Mm-hmm.
and to know your why.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I love this because it's not just what even you're paying yourself. I
Mm-hmm.
really like the conversation around initial investments, and also preparing for the future,
Yeah.
because that happened to me and I was not prepared. When things completely out of your control happen.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
okay, I'm looking at our time and I'm looking
I
what else do I
know.
want to ask. Okay, so I know I asked about the mistakes. Are there best practices? Anything like that people should absolutely be thinking about as they are pricing their offer?
Well, one really huge thing is to really be mindful of the fact that you are emotional about money for your reasons, and so are the people that are buying from you. And so just acknowledge that we don't make decisions in a rational, logical way. It's emotional. So make sure that you are aware of that. And I think one of the reasons why I like to highlight that is whatever your price is, that's the right price. I mean, we can get into the mechanics of whether or not it positions you in the way you want to be positioned and all of that to further refine, quote unquote, right. But if you decide that you want to charge $10 for something, $1,000 or 10,000, if there's someone that will buy it at that price, that's the right price. And I think when you recognize the emotional entanglement that can be involved in that, it can help you to feel good, even if it's a starting point about the price that you have, and just let experimentation kind of cement whether that's the price you stay with or you adjust it. Um, what else? Best practices.
Well, let me ask you this,
Okay.
unless you
Nope,
have a
go
thought.
ahead. Go ahead.
Well, so I know you have a pricing masterclass coming up,
Uh-huh.
and those generally, how long do they last?
We say 2 hours, but I will also extend it for, like, 15, 30 minutes for people that want to stay after for more Q&A. But I wrap up the content within 2 hours.
So I know it's interactive,
Yes.
but what's the type of conversations you're having, right? So maybe it's not a best practice, but it's like, here are the things that we should be considering. Maybe just some of those that like happen in the masterclass.
So one of the things that happens in the masterclass is a light bulb moment, an aha moment, because in the masterclass, there are 4 relationships that I'm really inviting people to tap into. Your relationship with money, your relationship with yourself, with your business, and with your people, and how that shows up in both subtle and not so subtle ways when it comes to pricing. And recognizing that in some instances, we are resolving things in our business and with our money that may or may not have been explored before. So here's an example. I have people do an exercise where I ask them to think about their relationships in their lives, both the people that they spend a lot of time with and the people that they spend a lot of time with just in their head. They may not even know these people, but they are influencing them. And I ask them to think about the relationship, the nature of that relationship. How do those people energize them or deplete them? And then I ask, if your business were a person, which relationship would it most reflect? If you were to look at your pricing and your approach to pricing, which relationship would it most reflect? If you're looking at your sales process and how you approach that, which would you most reflect? And the reason I came up with that exercise is because I discovered, even after therapy, that my relationship, or more aptly, the absence of my relationship with my father, was showing up in my sales process. And I would take so personally when someone would take a really long time to say no, or if someone said no, as opposed to recognizing, A, you're not going to get every, prospect that you go after, A, and B, the follow-up process is a part of the process. And they say, research anyway says that it takes 7 touch points or whatever before someone, in some instances, some people make an immediate decision, but others, it can take 7 touch points. And so I had to develop a cadence that allowed me to respect the follow-up process, but that didn't tip me over into that, oh, choose me. Like, my issues with my father, he's now deceased, but my issues with my father, they're not your responsibility. And so that should not be playing out, right? So that's what made me think of this exercise. But really, what amplified it was not only recognizing how it was showing up, how that relationship that has nothing to do with business was showing up in my business, recognizing it in other people's businesses as well, other clients. So I had another client who did all of the right things, first generation, and her family was all about education. She went to Ivy undergrad, Ivy business school, worked at one of the top consulting firms, joined a partnership, became a partner, and then went out on her own, and couldn't understand why some of the very same clients that she was going after on her own versus when she was in the partnership, why were they giving her pushback on her pricing when that was never the case when she was within the partnership? unpack it a little bit more. And we recognized that we needed to address the fact that while she got the message around education, she also got the message of don't be like those rich people. And so when you're in a partnership, it's a lot easier to negotiate because it's not you, it's the partnership. But when it's your own firm, you take it a little bit more personally. And so that person pushes back, and you're willing to discount or come down on the number. And we had to like really get her to understand that that's what was going on here, even though this newfound position of having money, being rich, being wealthy, and there are two different very things, and she was both, that was helping her to support her family, was not helping her in terms of taking her business to the next level because she was capping that. And then one final one was a client who every time she would go home, she would be so excited, whether it was a family gathering or a holiday, to share with her father how great her business was doing. And he's like, that's really sweet, but when you're going to get a real job? And one might hear that and be like, God, he's so mean. But he was of the generation where success is you work at a Fortune 500 company, or better yet, a Fortune 100 or 50 company, or you work for the government. That's secure, that's success. This entrepreneurship thing, what is that? And sometimes we don't recognize the ways in which that chatter, both in our head and literally, influences how we show up for our businesses and in our businesses.
And this, my friends, is why Jacquette is a financial behaviorist. It's not just about math, because we don't make decisions just based on math.
Nope. Nope.
Oh, it's so good. Okay, I know we're at time, but let's briefly, I know that a few times a year, maybe, I don't know how often you do these
Yep.
pricing master classes. So would love for people to find a way to sign up for that. And then also wanted to share, Jacquette and I were talking before we got on here, for anyone who signs up for Growth Accelerator. So if you're wanting to come in and work those 6 weeks with me starting June 4th, where we work on streamlining, that offer and the branding and marketing, sales, all of that. At the end of that, after the program is over, Jacquette is going to do a bonus session
Yeah.
just for those of you. So if you sign up, you'll get that. If you don't need all of that, but you do need the pricing, you can just sign up directly for Jacquette's Masterclass. So will you share a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah. So you can go to jacquettetimmons.com/pricing masterclass. We do it twice a year. I'm of the opinion that you should at least review your pricing and the portfolio of your pricing. If you don't do it quarterly, then at least do it twice a year, biannually. So we offer this in June and December. And yeah, I mean, like I said before, we are deconstructing or reconstructing, as the case may be, your pricing, looking at, what do you offer? What's the positioning? Where do you want to be on that spectrum of premium, standard, budget, mid-range? Where do you want to be? And does your pricing reflect that? And looking at your offers as a portfolio and looking at all of that through the lens of, is it helping you to achieve your goals? How are those different relationships that I mentioned with money, with yourself, with your business, with your people? How is that showing up? And never without any judgment or shame. But if it's not showing up with the way that you want it to, you can leave with a starting point anyway, because it is just 2 hours of a blueprint for how you can make the transition from where you are to where you want to be.
All right. This is such an important topic. Thank you so much for coming on here and sharing today, because it was so much better than if it would have just been me and my opinions, which are fine, but that
Yeah.
is not my area of expertise. And it is yours, and you're so good at it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This was so much fun.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. Stay tuned. We have one more episode next week to wrap up Small Business Month. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, give the episode a like and leave a comment below so we can keep the conversation going. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a future episode or announcement. Listening on Apple, Spotify, or another podcast app, you can watch the video and join in the after show conversation by visiting hustleandflowpodcast.com.